Hey guys, this is a continuation of my Romeo and Juliet Act 1 summary and recap and analysis. And this is the final scene, Act 1, Scene 5. So in Scene 5, Lord Capulet welcomes everyone to his party and says that if people are not dancing, it is probably because they have corns or thick calluses on their feet. So he's trying to use some reverse psychology here and basically say, hey, if you're not dancing, you probably have disgusting feet. And so everybody's probably thinking, okay, we need to dance. So Capulet, he knows how to party. He's a funny, good entertainer. Romeo sees Juliet and he instantly falls in love with her, and he's actually speaking out loud to himself. And Tybalt, Juliet's cousin, recognizes Romeo by his voice and he wants to go kill him. But Capulet holds Tybalt back and he says that he has only heard good things about Romeo. Verona speaks well of him. So Tybalt holds back, but he vows to get revenge for this insult. Romeo and Juliet meet. Romeo compares Juliet to a holy shrine, and he compares his lips to pilgrims that have traveled far and wide to reach Juliet. Juliet's into it. They kiss. And the party ends, but Romeo and Juliet never got each other's names. So Romeo asks the nurse, who is that? And he's pointing to Juliet. And the nurse tells him, it's Juliet. Juliet asks the nurse, who is that? Pointing to Romeo. And the nurse goes and finds out that that is Romeo. So the nurse tells Juliet he is Romeo and a Montague. And this news, you can't see that, but this news to Juliet is devastating. So Juliet's devastated. There are some important lines to look at from Scene 5. So at first, when Romeo sees Juliet, this is where we see the way that Shakespeare plays with language to help develop character. And so Romeo, he almost gets, well, not almost, he gets totally poetic. He's speaking in rhyming couplets. He's comparing Juliet to a bright jewel in an Ethiopian's ear. So let's look at this. He says, oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. So it's almost like she's so bright that she's brighter than torches. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night like a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear, beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. So shows a snowy dove trooping with crows, as yonder lady o'er her fellows shows. The measure done, I'll watch her place of stand, and touching hers, make blessed my rude hand. Did my heart love till now, forswear its sight, for I never saw true beauty till this night. So again, I brought up here, seems she hangs upon the cheek of night like a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear. You know, that's a simile comparing her to just a jewel in an Ethiopian's ear, which would be a stark contrast. There's some hyperbole here where he says, beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. So she's so beautiful. She's like too good for earth. He says, so shows a snowy dove trooping with crows, as yonder lady o'er her fellows shows. He's comparing Juliet to a snow white dove in a crowd of crows. This is funny. It's kind of a callback to like when Benvolio said that he would make Rosaline look like a crow compared to swans. It's a little bit of a connection here, although it's ironic because now, well, it's not, it's I guess ironic because Benvolio was right, but yeah, it's also ironic that Romeo is over Rosaline, it seems like. It's as if she never existed. We'll see that in a line coming up. Romeo says, the measure done, meaning when the dance is done, I'll watch her place of stand, so I'll watch where she's standing, and touching hers, make blessed my rude hand. So he wants to go touch her hand. And he says, then finally, did my heart love till now, forswear its sight, for I never saw true beauty till this night. And I see that and instantly I think, what? What about Rosaline? So, you know, he moves on from her really quickly. And again, we're all thinking, what on earth? So he gets over her quickly. Something else that's really important is at the end, Juliet asks the nurse to find out Romeo's name. She says, go ask his name. And she says to herself when the nurse goes, if he be married, my grave is like to be my wedding bed. And that is a massive example of foreshadowing. You know, she's basically saying that her wedding bed will be her grave. She wants to die, basically, if that guy's married. And she ends up getting news that he's not married, but maybe it's even worse because he is a Montague. So Act 1 ends basically with Romeo's feeling better because now he found somebody that he's in love with, but it's a problem because it's his enemy. And Juliet she's having the conflict of, man, do I need to marry this guy Paris? I'm not really into him, but my parents want me to. And all that goes out the window now because she just met this guy that she seems to very quickly fall for. So, a couple lasting or parting ideas or thematic things to look at in Act One, and that we can continue to track moving forward with the next acts. Basically, teenage love is being explored here, clearly through Romeo and Juliet. We could ask ourselves, is it fleeting? Is it real? Romeo really quickly moves on from Rosaline, and Juliet, she's not even 14. But there is some real passion there, and in a lot of senses, teenagers can fall in love maybe the hardest because they've never done it before. They don't have any point of reference the way that maybe an adult with an experience or with experience would have. So I think that this play shows how passionate and I guess emotional teenage love can be. It's definitely not as logical or rational as maybe a standard adult's relationship would be. And I guess we're left with the question to judge, what is real love? Is teenage love real love? And there's plenty of people that make great arguments on either end of that spectrum. We also look at relationships with parents. That's really important in this play. Lord Montague wants to know what's wrong with his son in Act 1, Scene 1, but he doesn't seek out Romeo himself. He sends Benvolio to do it. Maybe it would have been important for Montague to talk to his own son, and we see Juliet's mom struggling to talk to her daughter as well. So there's a vulnerability there at times it's maybe lacking that could be important later. The parents aren't always directly communicating with their kids, but maybe part of that is because their kids are teenagers, and that's a hard thing to do at times. Parental expectations is important too. I mentioned this a bit already with Juliet's mother, but Juliet's mom is a really young mom, and Juliet's mom had a different upbringing and experience compared to her daughter. Lady Capulet pretty much had to probably marry Lord Capulet in an arranged fashion, and she probably expects her daughter to do the same thing. And she probably also expects her daughter to have kids early like she did. So that can be a problem, and that's even relevant today because, we have parents today who maybe have had different experiences than their own kids, whether they were working at a younger age or maybe they did go to college or didn't go to college. And sometimes generation after generation, the times change and, the world changes, and that can be difficult for parents to sort of deal with, and that connects to this idea of parenting a teenager. It's always tough because teenagers are going through so many changes, and obviously they're hormonal. We see the struggle that these parents are having with that in this play, but at times, again, it's important to communicate, and that doesn't always happen well. Self-identity is also a big idea to look at here, especially with Juliet. She's really trying to define herself, and she doesn't necessarily want to follow in her mom's footsteps and just marry somebody because her parents are telling her to. And Romeo's obviously figuring himself out too. I think the fact that he felt like Rosaline was the end all and be all lover of his, but then he very quickly moves on, shows us that there is still a bit of an immaturity there with Romeo, and he's figuring things out. The last two ideas here, fate. Fate comes up multiple times. Obviously, in the prologue, it's fated that Romeo and Juliet are not going to live, but that their deaths will end the arguments and the feud between their families. We hear Romeo talk about his own fate multiple times, and Juliet alludes to her fate also about her grave like to be her wedding bed if Romeo is married. So there's these questions of, were they fated to die, or are their decisions and their impulsivity, is that what sort of leads them down the path they'll eventually go down? Those are conversations we can have later about, is fate real or not? If you talk to Mercutio, he would probably say, no, we control everything. Where on the flip side, we saw in Act 1, Scene 4, Romeo pretty much said, I'll let God steer the course, or I'll let fate sort of direct me. And finally, revenge is going to be an important element of the story. Tybalt, it's already been alluded to that he's a violent character. Not even alluded to, it's just explicit. He's violent, but he's also really upset that Romeo showed up. So it's important to pay attention to that and see where that's going to go. Anyway, that's it for Act 1. We'll track all this for the continuing acts, or the acts to come.